Hey disc golf enthusiasts, my name is Sarah Hokom, PDGA number 34563. I'm here to give you my in the bag. This is basically the lineup that I've been using for the Las Vegas Challenge and the Memorial. At the moment, this is what's in my bag. It is likely to change in the future, but for now, let's go through the drivers. My main distance driver has been the Trace. This is what I trust off the tee. I like to throw it flat and have a predictable fade. It goes about 320 to 330. I carry several of them. They're still all of relatively similar stability, but I carry several of them because there's a lot of water around, and if I happen to lose one in the water, I want to make sure that I have a backup. The next set of drivers that I love to throw, and I'm getting more distance than I've ever gotten with these, is the PHOTON VANISH. This disc, I'm able to release it flat. It'll flex for quite a while and then it'll hook up. If I release it with a slight anhyzer, it'll flex and continue on a slow, long anhyzer turn. Of course, that's sidearm, what I typically throw. However, I'm also throwing this pink and blue VANISH, also a PHOTON, for backhand. I get to throw it at a slight hyzer, it flips up, rides for a while, and then fades out. It's been giving me a lot of distance on my backhand. I'm really loving this disc. It's giving me more distance than I've ever gotten. My next set of drivers is the Photon. I'm throwing both the neutron photon and the plasma photon. This is my go-to when I've got wind. Any kind of a headwind or any kind of stronger crosswinds. This, although it doesn't go as far, it only goes about 300 feet for me, it does hold the line in the wind and gives me a predictable finish so that I can throw the golf shot that I need. And shout out to Daps Kramer who gave me this nice beat-in photon at one of my MVP throw and go events. As far as distance drivers, I'm typically throwing 167, 168 to about all the way up to 175. And let's go to the fairways. I'm throwing a huge range of discs for my fairway lineup. Starting with the most stable, I'm really enjoying the Fireball. This is the Neutron Fireball. This disc doesn't go very far for me, but it has a very, very predictable fade that has a lot of skip to it. So whenever I have a shorter shot that I know it needs to skip and definitely finish right as a sidearm, this is the disc I'm picking up. It goes about 240, 250 for me on a flat shot, and special shout out to Fooch who hooked me up with this cool Fireball that's nice and beat in. The next set is the Shock. I'm really liking this disc as a predictable upshot approach disc. It goes about 250, 260, 265. I like to throw it either flat or at a slight anhyzer. The next set of discs I'm loving to throw is the Resistor. The Resistor will hold a really, really straight line for maybe 240, 250, and then it has very little fade. So I've been using this for a situation where I need to throw it hard and low, but I don't really want it to skip very far once it hits the ground. So this has been very useful for approach shots, about 200 to 250. The next stability would be the CRAVE. I'm throwing this in the Neutron plastic. I really like the CRAVE because it goes straight for a long time and has a little bit of a finish. So this is gonna go more like 280 to 300 with very little fade, nice and straight, but it's not gonna turn over for me. So if I have a OB on the left, I can still trust this up that left side. And then lastly on my fairways, I'm loving the Relay. I prefer the Neutron plastic. The Relay is has a lot of different options. I can throw it at all the different angles, hyzer, flat, and anhyzer to get a variety of shots. This will be my go-to driver in the woods. If I throw it with hyzer, it'll flip up and go straight. If I throw it flat, it'll go straight and maybe a little bit of a left turn. And if I'm throwing it with anhyzer, it'll hold a nice anhyzer and finish anhyzer as well. So this is a great disc for the woods. And I'm throwing them in both the 172, 173, but then also all the way down to a 164, 165, 166, depending on whether I'm looking for a flippier version of the shot or not. And that's my fairways. Let's move on to the mids. For my overstable mid, I'm throwing the Deflector. I really like this sidearm. It's got a really predictable finish, always gets a skip and a roll. As long as you can predict how that skip and the roll are gonna happen, it's great to just leave it out on the left side and let it skip on in. It's mostly what I'm using for sidearm, but I'll also throw a backhand for approach shots. Anywhere under about 185, 170, something like that is about how far I'll throw this. The next disc is called the Theory. The Neutron Theory. I really love this disc. It flies very, very easily. You don't have to put a lot of power behind it. I can throw it both sidearm and backhand. When I throw it backhand, I throw it with a slight hyzer. It pops up to flat and then just finishes straight. Goes about 200 to 225 feet. Really predictable shot. It's great for approach shots. Sidearm, typically I'll throw it flat and it has a nice slow turn, going about 175 to 200 feet. So really, really useful disc. And it's got a lot of ways you can manipulate it. I also really like the way that the rim is beadless and flat. That really works really well for a sidearm. And lastly, let's talk about putters. For my approach putters and throwing putters, I'm throwing the Envy, the PHOTON Envy. In this case, I've got the Jeff Faze phaser beam, so shout out to Jeff Faze for sending me this. I'm loving throwing it. I particularly throw these for approach shots, anywhere outside of about 80 feet into about 175 feet. This is gonna be my go-to approach disc. I like the predictable finish. I can just throw it flat, out to the right side, backhand, and it'll finish. A very little finish, very little fade. And so it's very easy to predict when you're talking about an approach shot. I can also throw it sidearm. I prefer to throw it with quite a bit of power at a slight hyzer, and it'll pop up to flat and go straight for about 200 feet. So this is a really great approach disc. I'm really loving it. And then as far as my putting putters, I push putt, which is my main putt. I push putt with the Ion. I really love the inside rim, the rounded inner rim. It's got a nice bead on it. Feels really good in my hand, popped out of my fingers, flies nice and straight and flat. Definitely great for push putters. I prefer the firm electron plastic. And then for my spin putt, which I'm just really incorporating more this year, which is one of the reasons why I fell in love with MVP, this disc right here. Again, that rounded inner rim that just feels so comfortable in my hand. And then a nice flat rim out here for my fingers to sit on. And it has a ton of glide, so I don't have to put a lot of power behind my spin putt. And it just continues to fly straight at the chains. That's a really powerful shot choice because you don't have to put so much power on it that if you happen to miss, your disc can be so far away. So it's really allowed me to have a lot of speed control with my spin putt and still being able to just aim straight at the chains and not having to predict some kind of a hyzer finish. So I definitely recommend checking out that. I also really like this in the firm plastic.
So that's what's in my bag. That's what I'll be throwing for the beginning of the season. Look out for an updated video later this year, as my bag is always changing and evolving as I improve my game. It'll also help you with the process of putting together your bag. I'm Sarah Hokom, and thank you for watching.